Hello, welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children, the podcast where I share the recordings of the bedtime stories I've improvised for my children over the years. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. For almost 20 years, I made up a new story for my children every night at bedtime. Many of those stories were recorded, and now I'd like to share the very best of those with you. I hope you enjoy these stories for wonderful children.
Once upon a time, there was a cow named Chantelle who could not moo, which was very sad because the way that cows talk to each other is by mooing. For instance, when a cow wants to say to the other cow, "Hey, you want to go over to that other field where the grass is greener on the other side of the fence?" That's exactly what they say, you're right. And when a cow wants to say, "Hey, I'm going to lay down in this mud for a while. Do you want to lay down in the mud with me?" The cow says, right, exactly. And when a cow wants to say, "Watch out, there's a mean-looking dog on the other side of the hill, so you shouldn't go over there," it says, right. So a cow that can't say moo at all is a cow that has a very hard time indeed. So this cow named Chantelle had never mooed in her whole life. Since she was born, she had not mooed. When she was a young calf, she had not mad. And well, which is sort of, yeah, sort of a little bit like that. It would be a like that sound. And as she grew up, she did not learn to moo, but she really, really wanted to moo. And so one day, she decided that she was going to go on a quest to find her moo. Now, her mother and father told her that this was silly, that cows were born with a moo. And if you weren't born with a moo, it's not that it was hiding someplace. You just didn't have one. You couldn't go find it. You just had to live without it. But Chantelle refused to accept this. And so she decided that she was going to go find her moo. Somehow, she had gotten into her head. And who knows how? Because cows are rather peculiar creatures, and who really knows how they decide what they believe. Somehow Chantelle had gotten into her head that moos came from the sun, and that the sun gave each new baby a calf a moo as it was born, and that perhaps the problem was that she had been born in the cellar of a barn where the sun did not shine, and so that was why she did not have her moo. Now, mind you, lots of other calves had been born in that barn cellar, and they all had moos. But somehow Chantelle was convinced of this. So she decided that the thing that she would do would be to follow the sun. And she knew that the sun always rose in one direction and always set in the other. And so she planned to start first thing in the morning when the sun was first rising and walk to the place where the sun set. And she figured that there she would meet the sun as it set and ask it for a moo of her own. And so that's what she did. Bright and early the next morning, she set out away from the rising sun. And she walked, and she walked, and she walked. At first, a couple of her friends, who were also cows, walked with her. But after a while, they turned and went back. And she continued to walk to the west. Until about noon, she came to a river that blocked her path. And she was not a good swimmer. So she began to walk along the river looking for a bridge. And she walked along the river looking for the bridge most of the afternoon. And she finally found one. Although she did not like the looks of it, it was an old stone bridge. And it looked sturdy, but it looked so old and kind of gray and mossy and sort of a little creepy. And she thought that it smelled funny.
Troll.
And so she got up on the bridge and she began to walk across it when, you guessed it, vaulting up from under the bridge was a troll. And the troll was enormous. And he stood on the bridge and he said, "Who's that crossing my bridge?" Well, Chantelle the cow had no moo, so she couldn't answer him. She just stood there. She figured that the troll could see well enough who it was who was crossing his bridge, so she just stood there and looked at him. And the troll looked at her, and he said, "Well?" And Chantelle just looked at him. She was very upset. She knew she could turn around and walk back the way she had come, but she did not want to miss the opportunity to meet the sun. So she decided that she was going to be brave, even though she was really not that brave a cow. And so she took a step toward the troll, and the troll just stood there and looked at her. And she took another step toward the troll, and another, until she was almost the troll. And the troll took a deep breath and said, and he stuck his big slimy wet tongue out, and he showed his big sort of corroded nasty teeth, and he made that terrible sound that only trolls can really make correctly. It was like that, but not exactly. And Chantelle was so frightened by all this that she made a noise. And she turned and she ran. And she ran all the way back to the field, and she got there after it was full dark. And even though the troll had not chased her, he had just stood there and watching her go. She kept making the noise the whole time back to the field. And when she got back to the field, the other cows woke up because they heard her coming, and they looked to see what was this creature that was making this strange noise. And they walked over to her, and Chantelle looked at them, and she said, "Cock-a-doodle-doo." And the cows all said, "Moo." But after some days, after Chantelle had calmed down, the next morning, what she said was cluck, 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 cluck. And well, although the cows in her meadow did not speak chicken, because they very much wanted to understand what Chantelle was saying, they all learned to speak chicken. And so now when Chantelle wants to say something, she says cluck, 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 which means, why don't we go to that field over there where the grass is on the other, greener on the other side of the fence? And when she says to say, "I'm going to lay down in the mud, would you like to join me?" she says cluck, 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 cluck. And the cows all understand her now. And when there's a dog on the other side of the hill that she wants to warn the other cows about, she says cock-a-doodle-doo, and they understand what she means. But when new calves are born, and they wander too far from their mothers come and have Chantelle tell them the story about the troll and his bridge in her strange little clucks and cock-a-doodle-doos. Chantelle means to tell the story so that the calves will not wander away from their mothers. But calves, being calves, several of them have wandered off to try to find the bridge where Chantelle learned to speak chicken. But none of them has ever found it.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but heckling and clever commentary were supplied by my children. The theme music was created by Brandon Thompson, and the logo was designed by Silas Wendelin. If you know someone who might enjoy the stories, please tell them about the show. Our website is storiesforwonderfulchildren.com, and preview snippets are posted to most social media. I'm Dan Wendelin, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.